Hi, everyone. This is Dawn Richard, also known as The Awakening with Dawn, and this is the Wake Up to Real Love podcast, where we share stories of struggles and triumphs and love, sex, and relationships, along with expert advice to create more conscious connections. I am super honored today. I have my new friend and colleague,
That's right.
Matthew Currin, with me. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you, Dawn. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, and I'm super excited to talk to you because you are a powerhouse.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so
You're a
much.
powerhouse with a really big and beautiful heart.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that so much. Again, I think it's about, working with others, lifting others up, and, what we can do to help each other, and ourselves, but help each other through troubling times or good times. And just, it's something that's on my heart, that I really love to help people. So.
Yeah, which is why we stayed on the call and the other night, an hour and a half after it ended.
Yeah, that's right. We kept going. We kept talking for sure. So that was a lot of fun until about
Okay,
11:30 at night.
I know. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, that sweet baby on your Facebook page made me cry.
Oh,
Who was
yeah.
that sweet baby, and who was that singing? And oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it was so
Oh,
touching. Tell me about that.
so I did a summit a few weeks ago, and it was Christians Unite was the summit, and we brought just 10 incredible people with 10 incredible stories
Mhm.
onto this podcast. And one of the speakers was a lady named Eva, and Eva has just an incredible story of things that she went through as a young lady, and now she moves forward and she puts what she went through and she helps people. She's part of some nonprofits down in Florida.
Mhm.
Um, but that was Eva, and she was singing to her baby. And she was basically singing, a hymn, and oh my gosh, the baby just, it turns from laughing and to this serious face and tears in the baby's eyes and, crying. And it's, you know, Eva wrote in the post, but you really feel it, and the Holy Spirit moves you. It moves you. And I think, about everybody's felt moved before. And then, here's this little baby, probably a couple of months old,
Mhm.
and just go from her, the baby's mom singing to it starts
Well,
crying. It's beautiful.
because she was basically singing, "You're worthy, you're
Yeah, you
special, I
are there.
love you
Mhm.
so much," and I
Absolutely.
mean, even thinking about it, I start getting a little emotional. It's
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful gift. And I'm
Yeah.
sure she was singing, like smiling and really sweet. And it just, I mean, the baby just started crying.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, this is incredible.
Absolutely. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. So
Wow.
when I saw it, when she shared it, I just had to share it because I just thought it was incredible.
Yeah, so sweet.
Yeah.
So obviously you are meeting all sorts of people based on this organization that you created called Convene.
Yes.
And we're reconvening today, right?
Yeah, that's right. We are reconnecting today, which is so funny. I told you the other night. I mean, people just have a way of when we get together and we talk and we're gonna, do something else. They'll say just intuitively, they'll say, "Hey, when can we reconvene?"
Uh-huh.
And I just love it. It's one of my favorite things because it's like I subliminally put it in their mind, that we need to reconvene. Uh,
Uh-huh.
so it's a wonderful thing.
So tell me what is your mission behind Convene, and what do you like, what's your vision?
Yeah. So I believe we all have a story, right? I believe that in life, we've gone through things, both positive and negative, that shape who we are, that
Mhm.
shape our framework. An example would be, when I go out and I speak at a conference and I'm talking about a certain subject, I tie it back to real life. I tie it back to my stories, and I think that a lot of people do that, but I think that we learn from each other. We sit around the table, or we're sitting here right now and, over a Zoom call, and a lot of people are doing Zoom calls. And I say, it's like me saying, "Hey, Dawn," and we talked to her. We were doing this before we started. "Dawn, if you were in this situation, how would you handle it?" Right.
Mhm.
And when you answer me and you talk to me, what's your answer going to be? It's going to be based off your story. It's going to be based off your life experience, and some
Right.
knowledge, but you're going to tie it, into your life and what you did, and whether it be positive or whether it be negative, whether you had some sadness or whether you overcame something, you're going to say, if I was in that situation, this is how I'd handle it. In fact, this is how I did handle it. So I believe we all have a story. And I believe it's important for us to share that story. And it all goes back to a mishap when I lost a good friend in the Marine Corps. I'm a Marine Corps pilot, retired Marine. And I lost a good friend in a 12-second mishap. There was a 12-second human error,
It's
and it
awful.
didn't need to happen. I found out a day and a half after this crash, where we lost 3 good Marines, that if a squadron had had a mishap a year and a half prior.
Mm-hmm.
But what they did is they didn't share that mishap from a year and a half prior. They didn't share what happened. And the fix for the helicopter was a 6-cent fix. You had to unscrew one bolt and screw another one in. But instead, they kept it a secret. They didn't talk about it outside of their squadron. Therefore, that aircraft.
Because it was an error and they didn't want to get any like bad press
Absolutely.
for it.
Absolutely. It's an error. So it looks bad on the squadron. It looks, and that happens a lot in the military. That happens a lot in, not just military, but it happens a lot in corporate.
Anywhere. Mm-hmm.
Anywhere. Yeah. It's you do something bad. You're like, okay. In aviation,
Let's cover it up.
In the aviation, you and I go on a flight, we get out of the aircraft and I'm like, okay, Dawn, what happened in that aircraft stays in that aircraft, and that happens all too often. So I set out on this mission that
didn't that piss you off? I mean, I would imagine that you had so much rage for losing your friend because of this.
Yeah, because
mistake.
of not sharing the information, because not sharing what it was literally a bolt. It was unscrewing what was called a single toggle switch, and screwing in a dual toggle switch. The crew chiefs could make that change to the aircraft in less than
2 seconds. Yeah.
Less than a minute. They could go out to the aircraft, unscrew it, screw another one in, and it would have been impossible for what ended up was the causal factor, the red cockpit dome light coming on in the aircraft. And they flew the helicopter right in the water.
It's awful. I'm so sorry.
Awful. Yeah, it was the worst night of my life, But yeah, so I kind of set out on a mission from that point on to, at first, and what I did a lot was, to avoid human error, to avoid things happening based off of lessons learned like that. I still do that. I still speak a lot about that. I still talk about a lot about that. But the more, I went from being a Marine to being an air medical pilot, something I'm really proud of, 659 patient flights.
Awesome.
Yeah. And now I'm the pilot for the Penske NASCAR and Indy team.
Ooh, how fun.
Yeah, the helicopter pilot. But in that process, I would go speak a lot at conferences, and I would be speaking at a hospital, like, let's say, and I'd be speaking to nurses, paramedics, doctors, you name it, people in there. And people would come up to me afterwards and they would say, hey, Matt, I know you were just talking to me about time critical decision making, how we make decisions, flying a helicopter in the ER. But can I talk to you about my marriage? Can I talk to you about my relationship? Can I talk to you about parenting? People always wanted to talk to me about things outside of time critical decision making.
You're like, I'm not a therapist.
Yeah. So I went and got my degree in counseling.
Which I find quite fascinating. I said, like, a helicopter pilot and a therapist, that just doesn't mesh to me, but somehow you pull it off. I guess probably because of your EN. We're talking about Myers-Briggs, that extroverted, feeler.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. That's it. That is my personality. If you go back to college, I found I played baseball. I'm always, just messing with baseball here, but I played baseball back in college, and I literally there was one, when I signed my contract with the Marine Corps, this is true. I think back and it's like, I always thought, to be a pilot, everybody used to say, you got to get a math degree, engineering degree, whatever. Well, I had to graduate on time because I signed my contract with the Marine Corps. There was one major. I sat with a counselor for hours. There was one major on the campus that I could get a degree in, timing wise. And that was a psychology degree. That was the only one we could fit the schedule. Yeah, with baseball and everything. So I left, the joke used to be, I got a degree in psychology, but I would say I really majored in the Marine Corps. That was what I majored in the Marine Corps because I was going to be a pilot. But it played perfect, because in military aviation, believe it or not, as a helicopter pilot, you're working with a crew. Right. So there's a lot of communication that has to go on, a lot of team communications. And you really need to know who you're working with. You need to know, we were talking about this before. You
Yeah.
need to know personalities. You need to know what makes people tick, how you can work together in a crew, how you can have that positive communication. Because it only takes 1 second to have some poor communication and get into a situation where you can get into a mishap.
Mm-hmm.
Aviation can be dangerous.
And what did you learn about communicating and relationships growing up in your family?
So I had a wonderful wonderful experience. Parents really, loved each other. Very, um, I'd say very touchy feely, very caring, family.
Hmm.
Really wonderful. Um,
Siblings?
Siblings. I had two older brothers. You
Uh-huh.
know, two other brothers that were again real positive. Very competitive family.
It's a
When it came
bunch of boys. What do you expect?
Yeah, a bunch of boys. So we were very competitive, challenged each other a lot.
Hmm.
All went on to play college sports. My middle brother was really the best. He was an incredible baseball player.
Hmm.
Um, you know, um, so I was lucky. I was the youngest, which is funny because I'll be honest. Now it's not quite the same as far as how my family is, how they communicate, who they are. It's really is what I remember growing up was very positive.
Hmm.
Sometimes right now I have a older brother who struggles with addiction.
Hmm.
I have, parents who unfortunately struggle with addiction, alcoholism.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm the family counselor. I'm the one that gets called. I'm the one who is constantly, working amongst these four, you
Were
know.
were you the peacemaker growing up?
Yeah, I was the youngest and I was the peacemaker. Yeah,
Oh,
I was always the peacemaker. I was always the communicator. Um, and so that's just who I was.
like the mediator between everybody.
Mediator. Yeah, the mediator. So still
Uh-huh.
am. I still
Uh-huh.
am. But when I was growing up, there was none of that. I mean, it was literally it was never not really that bad that I saw.
Uh-huh.
And I just think it's since everybody's gotten older, you know, it's kind of become to that. But that's part of who makes me who I am, you
Right.
know. It
Right.
is it is what it is. And you know, that's part of life, right?
And so how do you learn to love and accept everybody as they are?
Yeah. Well, we talked about this before too. I'm a real big believer that you have to know who personalities. You have to know everybody's different. Everybody's got a different personality. Where God, when He put us on this earth, we didn't come through the cookie cutter, right? We're not all the same, right?
They broke the mold after you, Matt.
That's right. Yeah. But we're not all the same,
Yeah.
and I think when you talk relationships, whether that be with your parents, whether that be with your siblings, whether that be with your spouse or with your kids, or if it's somebody you're coaching or teaching or whatever it might be, it's incumbent on you to learn who that person is, learn who that person's personality is. Because again, we talked about this before, the golden rule and the platinum rule, you know,
Yeah. Can
that,
can you can you tell the
yeah,
listeners what's the difference? Because I'd never heard of the platinum
I mean,
rule
so,
either.
so the golden rule basically is obviously is do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Very important. Treat people how you want to be treated.
Yeah.
Now, the misnomer in that is, Dawn, you and I are different people. So yes, I want to treat you with love and respect as a human,
Hmm.
treat you, how you need to be treated. However, you're not the same as me. So I need to know who you are and meet you where you are. Right. So the platinum rule is you take it a step further. Treat Dawn the way she needs to be treated, and hopefully and kind, you'll treat me with the same, respect and kindness. So
So why do you think that we have such a hard time doing that?
I think people, I think people look inward too much. I think people really just focus on themselves. They don't take the time to look at people with individuals. I don't think they take the time to get to know what makes that other person tick,
Mhm.
right? We talked about this a little bit, the other night, and I told the story of, in 2001, I'm steaming to Afghanistan. We're going to Afghanistan, right?
Right.
We're it's 2001. I'm in Afghanistan in November 2001. We read two books on the way. Here you go. You got a bunch of Marines going to war. We are going to fight Al Qaeda and the anti-Taliban. We are going to war. We read two books on the way there, right? One is The Five Love Languages, and the other one is The Notebook, right? And this is a bunch of Marines.
And I said, all of you Marines on the ship were like, shh, don't tell anybody that this is what we're reading.
Yeah, we're going to fight. We're going to war, literally. I mean, that's so funny. We're going to war. And Dr. Kerry Chapman goes to the church that I go to here, but we're going to war. And that's the two books that we read. You
Who
know,
picked
why?
those out? Who picked those out, Matt? You did.
Yeah, I got it sent to me, and
You're
and
very in touch with your feminine
yeah.
side.
Well, and it's you know what, my mom sent it to me. If I'm being honest, she sent me the not the 5 love languages. If I'm being honest about that, we talked a little bit about that. My marriage, my wife, and myself. We
struggling a little bit.
Yeah, it wasn't that we were struggling because we loved each other, but we just didn't know who each other was. At the time we did and we didn't. Right? Again, in the old mode of who I am. If you go to the 5 love languages, I'm physical touch. Well, obviously, if I'm physical touch, she should be physical touch. That's just how it works, right? Well, no, that's not how it works, because it took me reading this book. I can never understand why she would get mad at me if the kitchen wasn't clean, or, if things weren't in order. Well, she's acts of services. That's who she is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So until I realized, we would argue, we would fight, and I never could understand. I'm like, well, what's the big deal? So the kitchen's not clean, Because
it drives me crazy.
That's right. Exactly. And so look, this book, I think I was, trying to make sure things were right, and got the book. Actually, somebody in the Marine Corps gave it to me, is what happened. And so my wife read it, I read it, and that was actually on the ship. That was my second time reading it, to be honest. So I had read it before. I was reading it again. And then my mom sends me The Notebook. Why, I have no idea. But she sends me The Notebook. And so
I want to know how all the other platoon members, how your company, like how that impacted them.
Well, it was really interesting because one of my best friends in the world, in fact, I was on the phone with him this week, and we get on the phone. He lives in Bandera, Texas. So you got to think this guy was a Cobra attack helicopter pilot. He's one of my roommates, and big, strong. He calls him, himself a Texas hillbilly, right? Uh-huh. His idea of fun was to go out. I would see him when we lived in base housing on a military base. I would see him walk by with that big axe in his hand, and he would be walking, and he would go in the woods. So you think of CrossFit before CrossFit, he was going in the woods, and his idea of fun was chopping down trees. He would go in there and just take trees and work out.
That's what his parents told him when he was being punished. It's like, go have some fun.
Go have some fun. Go chop down a tree. So, here you go. You got this guy, one of my best friends in the world. And he is, he's thinking about, why are me and my wife not meeting right? And so he was I remember it was my room that read it first. And then past that, it just started going. And you know what? I think part of it was we were going to combat. That was such an uncertain time, in our country, in our world. And the majority of us in our squadron were married. And so I think that's why it really kind of passed around, because you are thinking about, what if I don't come back? What if you are thinking about your spouse, and, that, I think that's really why it got passed around, and everybody was reading these real soft, sappy books, and the 5 love languages is not sappy, but The Notebook is. Good Lord,
Oh yeah, I cried. I was like, I want that man in my life.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, but that's what we did, and then we went into Afghanistan and fought the war. But it's a joke amongst us all.
I honor all of you people in the service.
Yeah,
my dad was in the service too, and it's a job that I would never want.
Yeah.
And so I really commend, everyone, you and everyone else that serves our country to help keep us free.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
it's something I'm very proud of, to this day. Once a Marine, always a Marine. That is, there's nothing truer for somebody who is a Marine. You're not an ex-Marine. You're always a Marine.
You're always a Marine.
You're always a Marine. And so something I'm very proud of, for sure.
Yeah, that's what my mother-in-law said too. Yeah, she was like, once a Marine, always a Marine.
That is true.
10 Hut.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Well, so how does this golden rule, because it's funny when you said, I think the platinum rule, because we're so focused on ourselves, but it's almost, Matt, it's almost in an unconscious way. It's like we see our own worldview,
Yes.
but we still don't go inside ourselves.
Yeah.
A lot of people, this is what you're talking about, really exploring other people, being curious and asking them questions about their worldview and their perspective and what's meaningful to them.
Yeah.
And these are the things that create true intimacy, when you
Yeah.
can meet your partner or your friend or your colleague or a person on the street. When you meet them, then you it helps you, like, eliminate the differences and
Yeah.
really find this sense of commonality. I mean, I saw your interview with Patty and Safira.
Mhm.
I think I watched like the first 30 or 40 minutes of it, but you were talking about how people just come up to you and you start talking to
Yeah.
them, and she asked you, how do you feel when they do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember what your
Oh,
response
yeah. It
was?
feels good, right? When you're helping people, it feels good, when there's a positive energy there. There's
Uh-huh.
also a bad side of that too, when there's a negative energy, and when somebody's just sucking you dry, and as counselors, you feel that sometimes, right? People will
Where
leave.
where do you feel it?
Oh, well, in the heart area, this area here, when I'm, helping somebody, it feels good. When it gets up here, when it's a negative energy, it kind of pulls at the head. But I went on and carried on that conversation with some people after that,
Mhm.
and you know what? It can feel like you've run a marathon,
Mm.
right? It can feel like when you get it sucked dry, and everybody's been around that person. It just you talk to them and you're like, oh my god, I'm exhausted, right?
Mhm.
So there's that
I
positive.
I usually feel it like somebody's pushing on my chest, and it goes like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel exhausted when somebody just pulls out of you. It just can be exhausting, you know. And
but they probably don't realize it, Matt.
no, it's some of it's personalities, right? And I'm
Uh-huh.
the type of person I'll pour into everybody because I think I can help make a difference in people, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, and I think it's important that you do pour in.
Uh-huh.
I'll give you an example. We talked about this earlier, and I think that I want to touch on this because I love that when you were talking earlier, you said your kids played, soccer. So my son just got done playing college soccer last year,
Mhm.
and my daughter coaches. My daughter plays soccer, not coach. My daughter plays high school soccer now and travel soccer as well. I coach high school soccer, so I'm a JV coach at a high school.
One of the million things that you do.
Yeah, but I want to tell a story about why I think it's so important, and I think a lot of coaches don't get this. I think it's something that not just coaches, but people who teach
Coaches,
defense,
people,
teachers, all.
period.
So here's a story. So we were playing a game a number of years ago. I had a group of U12, 12-year-old girls, and we were playing in a pretty big game because the team that we were playing the team that was higher than us, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so as a coach, I knew a lot of these girls felt like they had been wronged by being put on down on my team.
Uh-huh.
So they were pretty motivated going into this game. And so we came out and the score was 3-1, right? So we were winning. But they were pressing. They were pressing pretty hard. And I had this girl, still to this day. I mean, she's like one of my daughters, but so her name is Kinsey. And so Mark, her dad was one of my better friends. And so, but they had another daughter who was playing a soccer game at another field. So
Mhm.
Mark was talking to his wife, Denise. All right. So we're set up here. So there's about 5, 6 minutes left in the game. And Kinsey's the best goalie that we have. Hates goalie, right? Hates, just does not, at that age, you don't have a goalie. So
Yeah,
nobody
yeah.
wants to play goalie, but she was a really good goalie. So um, Mark's talking to Denise and he goes, oh no, Matt's taking Kinsey off the field. And he knew it was coming. And so he's like, oh gosh. And so Kinsey comes over and I'm like, hey, Kinsey, I need you to play goalie. And she goes, Coach Matt, don't put me in goalie. And her head just drops. And she's like, I don't like goalie. Please don't put me in goalie. And I was like, Kenzie, I was like, and I meant it too. I was like, Kenzie, you are the best goalie that we have on this team. I'm like, do you want, I was like, I know we want to win this game because we've talked about it. Y'all want to prove that y'all should be, who you are and be on the higher team. I'm like, so you're the best we've gotten. And so Denise is on the phone and she goes, oh my God, he's not going to put Kenzie in the goal. And these were the words that Mark said to her. Mark goes, oh no, it's okay. I can tell by the way she's running on the field. Right. And so she went in and she made like 3 of the most amazing stops.
Oh, it must have been so exciting.
And so it was so exciting. And we scored one more. So we ended up winning 4-1. But she literally made the most amazing stops. But the point that I'm making is I knew what kind of person Kenzie was. And I knew that I had to lift her up as a person and give her that support that she needed to go onto the field. Now there's other players that you got to kick them in the butt and you got to get on them and you got to challenge them. That wasn't Kenzie. Kenzie needed to be, you're good, you can do it. But that's life, and I think all too often people don't get to know the people in their life. They only think about themselves. So back to your point earlier, they don't.
So how do we learn to accept our differences and really treat the other person the way that they need to be treated? So say, for instance, you're the kind of person that, needs his butt kicked, and I'm the kind of, or vice versa, I'm the person that needs my butt kicked, and you're the one that needs, nurturing and encouragement. So if I'm the one that I know that I need my butt kicked, then that's how I tend to treat you, right? Because that's what's motivating to me. Exactly. And vice versa. But how do we learn to honor what's right for the other person when it's not in our comfort zone? Because I think this is where people struggle, because I don't know how to deal with you because I'm me.
Yeah. First, listen. Sit back and listen and watch. Exactly. Sit back and listen and watch and observe and see what and educate yourself, right? It took me reading that book to sit back and go, you know what? That's very simple. The 5 love languages, 1 of 5, and I can put my wife and I can put my kids into a category. But I also put my players into a category too when I'm coaching, right? I know what each of them likes, but I have to sit back and observe and talk and communicate with them to figure out who they are. I have to ask those questions and find out who they are, right? And then I also have to understand that, like, for example, if my wife, because I am the touchy-feely guy, and physical touch is my thing, but if I want that, physical touch in return, then don't I need to make her happy? Well, what makes her happy is acts of service, keeping the house clean, little simple things. If she comes into the house, for example,
keeping the house clean is not little and simple in my opinion.
But that's you, right? We talked about that earlier. But for her, like, I'll give you an example. Like, my wife and my daughter, this is one of the worst things I can do. My wife and my daughter go this weekend to a birthday party at a mountain house in North Carolina. The worst thing I can do is to let her come back in the house to a messed up house.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take me that long to straighten up, even if I wait till the last 30 minutes, right? Just press, get my mind. Okay, you're on the way home. I'm cleaning.
On the baseball field.
Yeah. Get your mind. And so I know when she walks into the house is to have stuff in order. Very simple. It's very simple. No matter what I'm doing, stop, get things in order, because if not, it can throw her and our relationship in chaos. Just as in return, if I want to hold her hand or I want to hug her or I want to kiss her, and if she doesn't respond in kind, then that's frustrating to me. Right. So it's learning to listen and just know who that person is. And we can talk, we were talking before about DISC, and we were talking, Myers-Briggs and all that. There's so many different personality things. Just get to know your people, know what makes them tick. And I think, again, all too often we don't do that. We don't take the time to listen and to really know what makes others tick.
Because why? Because maybe because we haven't even figured ourselves out.
That's part of it. Yeah, if you don't know who you are, how can you know what others are?
Hmm.
Especially in a in a male world, the male side of the house. I mean, that's touchy feely, right? Why that's not what a male does. Well, guess what? You entered into that relationship. You entered into that marriage,
Hmm.
right? You entered into it for a reason.
Hmm.
And we could talk about the different phases of a relationship, the honeymoon phase, and all the stuff that's going on. But guess what? Once you're in that relationship, you're married. You have to figure out who that person is that you're married to.
Hmm.
You know, but we don't do.
Well, yeah, and I think we talked a little bit about this before too, that I really have this strong opinion that, whoever we're in relationship with, they trigger us.
Yeah.
We trigger them and they trigger us from time to time, and sometimes more often than not.
Yeah.
But they're basically all opportunities for us to examine, what did this remind me of? Like, maybe I'm feeling some fear or some anxiety around something, and maybe it's reminding me of a situation that happened in the past,
Yeah.
or maybe I'm feeling like disconnected or abandoned, and why am I feeling that? And yet, instead of like slowing down and being connected to your body, because you and Patty and Safira talked about that too. It's like
Yeah.
this mind, body, spirit. It's one system, right? And we tend to separate these systems and act like they're different entities.
Yeah.
And so we disconnect from our body, we disconnect from our heart, we
Yep.
disconnect from our mind. And then we sort of run on this like autopilot,
Yeah.
haha,
There you go.
autopilot system, where we're unaware and we're not really conscious about what's going on inside of us. And
Yeah.
so then that affects the way that we're able to be a witness to somebody else.
Yeah. No, I think you're so right. If we don't know what's going on with us and we're not in control of what's happening with us, how do we help others? How do we lift others up? How do we know what others' needs are? We can't
Mhm.
even answer our own mind, body, spirit, our own emotional, physical, needs.
Mhm.
How can we help others? Right?
Yeah.
And it's hard,
Yeah.
it's hard to do that. And I think another thing that you're dealing with so much today, especially on the younger generation and then on kids, is they don't, the communication piece.
Yeah.
We lose the communication piece, right? Because we don't talk like we used to talk. We don't get to know people like
What do
we.
you mean?
Yeah. What do you mean? And it can be so misconstrued, you know whether this is better. It would be better if we were sitting in the same room, right?
Right.
But this is at least better than just shooting you a text.
Right.
you know and so often we lose that.
It's like
we
you
don't
miss the nuances of the
Yeah.
conversation, of the tone, of the body language, of
Yeah.
the.
So you're talking about Patty, and I love Patty to death, and we just did a book review with that, but we talked about two words in the book review. We talked about the word why. And so when I was getting earlier on in school, but then when I was getting my master's degree, we had to pick out a word, and we had to write a paper about a word. And I wrote about why,
Mhm.
because why can be looked at in so many different ways. We can talk about what is your why, and that's a positive thing. You can think, okay, well, this is my why, right? But I can also come out and say, Dawn, why did you do that? And
Mhm.
so in communication, why is a word that can be taken so many different ways.
Mhm.
And studies show that if I say, why did you do that? What happens to you in your body language? Yeah. Yeah. You automatically go on defensive, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Studies show you'll turn, you'll get defensive, you'll shut off. So again, it's
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 like it's like accusatory.
oh,
Why?
it's accusatory. Excuse
Uh-huh.
me. Why? And so, but that's the point. The point is so often in these things right here, we can talk, communicate, and that communication can be lost because you read it, and you're not getting the inflection in my voice. You're not getting the eye contact, And I could say why, or for example, and you take it like, why is he asking me that? Or it could be a positive thing. So
It
just
could be. I mean, because I'm a huge question person.
Yeah.
I drove my parents crazy, which
Yeah.
is, I mean, I always laugh and say, trust me, I was like this long before I became a therapist. You know,
Yeah.
I'm like shooting all these questions. They're like, dang, you ask a lot of questions. I was like,
Yeah.
that's why I became a therapist, not
Yeah.
I became a therapist and then I started doing that.
Yeah.
But I feel like this why is this curiosity, like, help me understand. And maybe
Yeah.
that's sort of a better way to approach it, not like why, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah. Yeah.
accusing, but I'm not understanding, I don't see your perspective. So can you please help me
Yeah.
understand? Because this is what true intimacy is, right? Into me see.
Yeah.
So unless you're asking me or I'm telling you what's going on inside of me, we're just talking.
Yeah.
We're not connecting.
Yeah.
And I think that people want to feel connected.
I do.
It's that
Yeah.
it's that sense of belonging. It's that sense of you matter or I matter, or I'm worthy of your attention in this moment,
Yeah.
as
Absolutely.
opposed to just being ignored or neglected or pushed away or whatever. It's like we all want to be seen and heard and
Absolutely.
understood.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's just it. You want to be seen, heard, and understood. And so again, that's a two-way street. It's a
Yeah.
two-way street, and that's what gets lost in the translation sometimes is that, you talk a relationship, is two people or multiple people.
Mhm.
And so it's just understanding and taking the time to listen to who that person is.
Mhm.
Listen and understand who that person is. We're not all the same.
Mhm.
No, again, there's not one mold that we all get come out of. And
Yeah,
right.
and I think because this was an issue with my ex and I, he would say, "Well, if it's important enough to you, you'll just tell me." And
Yeah.
I'll say, "Well, if it's important to you, then you'll ask me,
Yeah.
because otherwise, I feel like you don't really care. Like
Yeah.
you're not asking why.
Hmm.
You're just like overlooking and diverting your attention another way." And it's like we all, this. I think this part of intimacy is also just a real presence.
Hmm.
When you're with somebody and you feel their energy,
Yeah.
and it's this equal exchange of energy,
That's right.
where I'm giving myself, my heart,
Hmm.
to you, and you're doing the same in return. So when you were talking about some people suck your energy and some people give your energy,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It's like when it's a mutual exchange, you
Oh, yeah.
can go for hours,
You know
days,
it,
weeks,
and you know it.
months,
Yeah,
years.
absolutely. And you know it when you walk away from those positive exchanges, you feel good. You
Yeah.
feel energized. You feel like you've accomplished something. You feel motivated. When you walk
Yeah.
away from those negative exchanges, it's like, oh my God, that was horrible. That was hard. And you're tired and it's just brutal. So that energy that you give people is very important. It's very important. And giving people focus, right? I can sit there and we could be sitting at a restaurant and I could be going like this and looking at my phone. Am I paying attention to you? How does that make you feel? It's
Yeah.
horrible.
Ignored.
Yeah, ignore it. Right?
Unimportant.
Unimportant. So I'll give you an example last night. I was laying there with my wife and she was talking. All right. And we were both looking at our phones, and I put it down. So when she was talking to me, I wasn't distracted. Listen to
Mhm.
her. Because if
Mhm.
not, I'll just continue to scroll and look at things. And that's
Mhm.
that's it. She had things she wanted to say, you know. So yeah, we're so busy in life. We're so crazy. And I'll give you another example too. This and you have kids, right?
Yeah.
Social media, it's crazy for kids. I've talked. Social media is such a catch-22 for
Mhm.
parents, right? How
Great things about it and not so great things about it.
such a catch-22. So we sat down at the dinner table one time. Myself, I have a son, Braden, 23, Megan's 20, and Lainey is 16. This was probably 2 years ago.
Mhm.
And so we're all sitting there and we set their phones over there. Well, we sat there for about an hour and ate and talked and all that. At the end of that, Braden had maybe four Snapchats, right? Four Snapchats. Megan had, I think, like 13 Snapchats. Lainey had 80 Snapchats,
Oh my
right?
gosh.
80.
Wow.
And so, but okay, so there's a catch 22, right? So for younger kids, if they don't respond to these Snapchats, if they leave people on open,
Right.
yeah, then they're looked at, oh, she's ignoring me, she's not my friend, she's not giving me a positive, right? So it can be overwhelming. She had soccer practice one time and I sat and her phone was in the car and it was like bzz, 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 it just kept going off.
Mhm.
And she got into the car and she looked at her phone. She goes, this is exhausting, because she felt like she had to respond to all of it,
Mhm.
So it's that catch 22. The flip side of that, you have parents out there that say, I'm not going to let my kid have a phone. All right, I'm gonna keep them safe. I'm gonna keep them away. I'm gonna keep them in this social media away from this bubble.
Till they're
Sounds good, right?
21.
Yeah, till they're 21, right? So what's the catch 22 about that? The catch 22 about that just happened to my nephew last year. He was the last person in his peer group to get a phone. He was at the end of his ninth grade year.
Whoa.
End of his ninth grade year. So he was bullied, he was picked on,
Yeah. Yeah.
he was, oh, you can't afford a phone, you can't whatever. So it's this catch 22. You think you're protecting your child, but you're really getting him picked on. So I don't know what the right answer is. I mean, you have to find the balance with you and your family, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But
And
again,
try to teach your kids. I mean, this is something I've talked to my kids about too. It's like, you know, especially during this time, they're like, "Mom, can you go back to work? Like you're around too much," right?
yeah, that's right.
But
Yeah.
I said, "Can you guys just talk to me?" They're like, "Well, you've known me for 19 years. I don't need to do idle chit chat while I'm
Yeah.
going to get a drink of water or going to get some food or something." It's like, if it's important enough, then I'll come talk to you.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess I just, and I said to my 19-year-old, I was like, yeah, but you talk to your friends all the time. And he said, well, that's the point. He's like, we're constantly communicating with them. So
Yeah.
when we don't, it's like we want a break.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's you, mom.
And it's not with you, mom. Yeah.
That's right. We'll get to you when we get to you. Isn't that funny? That's hilarious.
What do you think is the greatest lesson to teach your kids?
Ah, that's a great question. One, I
And
think
I want to relate it to you and your wife too. Like does she have a different version of this answer?
no, I think she has the same version. I think my wife and I are 100% in alignment when it comes to this, and we really talked to, and I think my dad did my dad and my mom did a great job of putting these values into me growing up. And again,
Mhm.
it goes back to I go back to the golden rule, right? I go back to you treat people how you want to be treated,
Mhm.
right? You can take it a step further, like we talked about earlier, but especially at times that we're in right now, treat people how you want to be treated, right? And I think that's so important, you know, with your kids is to teach them values to really kind of, uh, you know, pour into others, listen to others, lift others up. But if you wouldn't like it, don't do it to somebody else.
Mhm.
That's really it. If you wouldn't like it and if it hurts your feelings and it makes you feel bad, then you should not do it to somebody else.
Mhm.
Because I think too often in life, we don't even think twice about hurting people, you know? And that's a shame. That's a shame that you would not put others before you and lift others up. So I think that's really the biggest message with my kids. And I think we've been pretty good about that in the process. I think as a parent, you want to protect your kids, but we've all seen our kids' feelings hurt,
Mhm.
right? We've all seen our kids' feelings hurt. And so I think there's always an opportunity for a lesson learned, right? And part of that lesson learned is you didn't like that, did you? Well, if you didn't
Mhm.
like it, make sure you don't do it to somebody else because
Mhm.
it's very easy, especially when you're young, to lash out at other people or to do things to other people.
Well,
Just
and that's what happens in marriages too, right?
that was
And
a
couple
marriage.
relationships, you take your communication for granted, or you take your connection for granted, and this was one of the reasons why I chose to get divorced.
Mhm.
Sadly, I mean, I loved the man a lot, but he wasn't treating me in the way that I deserved to be treated. And this
Yeah.
was something that I wanted to teach my kids, like, because a lot of times, the music, some of the music they listen to, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm really laid back and
Mhm.
lax. Like, I
Yeah.
listen to a lot of stuff that they listen to, but there are some things that just cross a line where I go,
Yeah.
that's just not okay,
Yeah.
you know? And they're like,
Yeah.
it's just words, mom. Well, words carry an energy,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And your actions carry an energy.
Yeah.
So if it is contributing in a positive, sort of
Yeah.
meaningful way for you, then by all means go for it. But if it's not, you know and this is what we were talking a little bit about, the riots and stuff, over
Mhm.
the last week and a half. It's like, these are not the ways that you resolve problems,
Yeah. Yeah.
and even by being unaware of what's going on for you, like, where are your blinders, where are your blind spots, what kind of things are you doing that contribute to these feelings of separation and fear.
Yeah.
And so in all aspects of our lives, we constantly have to turn back into ourselves and say,
Yeah. Why?
why what do I, help me understand.
Yeah. Again, I think that's a great thing that my father did for me, and the values that he instilled into me is again, I go back to it. It just revolves around to me. You treat people the way you want to be treated, right? We're all children of God. That's just the way I look at it. So I don't care who you are. I don't care what color you are. I don't care who you are. I'm going to treat you how I want to be treated, right?
Mhm.
And hopefully I get the same respect back to you because I'm giving you that respect. And I think you see that. And
Well, and what about if people are hurting you? Because
yeah,
I think this is a big part of a lot of these issues. It's like, well, you're hurting me, so I'm going to fight back.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's a tough situation. It is a tough situation because people are fighting back right now, you know,
And people are really hurting.
and people are really hurting. So I will tell you this. I I was mowing the grass this weekend, right? And so the name of my business, that it has been my business for since 6 years now,
Hmm.
right? Since 2014 is when I became this, is Convene Communities, Convene.
Hmm.
Right? And I was mowing the grass this weekend. I literally could not stop thinking this. It was like pouring into me. And it was like, convene, bring people together, right? And it was like, I think, I can't remember if I told you this story the other day, but I got to go to Israel last year. When I was in Israel, I was at the Western Wall, and you write a prayer when you go to the Western Wall, and you put the prayer inside of the wall, and you say your prayer. And I basically prayed for my wife. I prayed for my marriage. I prayed for my kids, my family, and then I prayed for. I said, allow Convene to do your will, God, because that's really what it's about. And so the whole weekend when I was mowing my grass, you can think what it is, but I had this overwhelming feeling of, hey, you have Convene. Get out there and do your job, you
Hmm.
know, bring people together. And that's really what we should be trying to do right now, is find a way, even if people are hurt, to bring people together. I was on a great call with a guy today. And it's the first of many. We're going to get back together this week.
Hmm.
Just a great guy. He was in the military, a black guy out there. And he said, look, it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of us, we're all in the middle. We're going together and we get along,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there's 10% on each side. And it's so funny because I think the same thing. There's 10% on each side that are, very unhappy, and cause the issues, and
Right.
it brings issues about. But there's really 80% of us are good people, and
Yeah.
and care about each other.
Yeah.
And so we were talking about it today, and it was like, now we need to come together. We need to come together and treat people how they need to be treated, and show that we can, you know, do the right,
Collaborate and problem
collaborate.
solve. solve.
Yeah, problem solve, collaborate,
And help each other.
and help each other. That's what I believe. I mean, I believe again, lift each other up. You know,
Yeah.
lift each
Yeah.
other up.
Yeah.
You know, all walks of life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm going to ask you, because I want to be conscientious of your
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Um, the last question that I ask people, and you can feel free to come back, because I know we can talk for hours and
Yeah,
hours.
yeah, yeah. I can sit here and keep going. Unfortunately, I'm on like we were saying, I'm on multiple boards for some nonprofits, and I have a board meeting coming up here for Joint Task Force 22 to 0, which has to do with the world we live in. 22 to 0. I think most people know 22 to 0 is 22 veterans commit suicide a day, right? So
Wow.
22 to 0 is the mission of this nonprofit. And I think it's great. They work for with veterans and first responders, but not to get off on a tangent, but yeah, I'm ready. Ask me the question. Here we go.
Okay. So the question that I like to ask all my guests, because my podcast is called Wake Up to Real Love,
Mhm.
is how do you define real love?
Ah, well, that's a great question. Again, I'll go back. How do I define real love? I define it as a mutual respect, um, where you are pouring into your person, that whoever that person is that you love. It can be your spouse, it can be your kids, it can be friends, it can be whatever, but you're pouring into them equally, if not more than what they're pouring into you. So you are, like with my wife, I think, we have come to a place, and it's transitional. You move through marriages, you move through relationship through different stages,
Different seasons. Yep.
different seasons, different stages, but you learn to understand and meet that person where they are. You
Mhm.
learn who they are. The meeting the person where they are is really important, right? Because we're all different people. And I think we don't think about that enough. Um, but with my wife, I, I love her. I respect her. When I see her, I still get that feeling. And it's just how it is, and that's how it should be, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Do you think that you can get to know other people if you don't know yourself?
no. Well, I think you can, but I don't think in a genuine way. I think
Mhm.
you have to know who you are. I
Mhm.
truly think you have to know who you are to get to know others.
Uh-huh.
Because when you get to know who you are and you have that self respect for who you are as a person, you can relax and allow people in and
Just
have
be yourself.
and just be yourself and have the confidence in yourself, right? If you can get to know who you are, have the confidence in yourself, respect yourself, then you can turn around and give the same in kind. I
Mhm.
think that's important. You have to get to know who you are.
Mhm.
You know? And again, that changes, day to day. I mean,
Yeah.
you have it, but you still have to, you have good days, you have bad days,
Well, and we're
um,
constantly evolving and growing and being
constantly evolving.
challenged, and
Absolutely.
different experiences happen outside of ourselves, and so we have to figure out how to bring meaning
Yeah.
to
Absolutely.
it, and just like your friend that died in this helicopter, like, it has changed the trajectory of your life,
Dynamically changed it. Absolutely.
right? And so your foundation that you're getting ready to go to is a big portion of how you're using your pain to
Yeah.
help serve and bless others.
Absolutely. And when I start every speaking event, I talk about the story. That's how I started. I tell the story, and I'll connect with you on that. Uh, Unfortunately, I'll make you cry probably because I'll be upset and emotional.
Yeah, of course.
But it's connecting to that story, and we all might we said we all have a story, right?
Yeah.
And our story might be different, but it's also interconnected, right? We cross paths in our stories,
Mm.
right? I think that's one of the hard things that people have is they feel alone. They
Right.
feel like they don't have any hope because they feel like they're walking this path alone.
Right.
Well, guess what? You're not walking alone.
Right.
You're not.
There's at least one other person out there who knows exactly what you're going through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Under
Maybe a few details are different, but the feeling experience
Mhm.
is the same.
It is. It is same.
You
And
know, those
and
feelings of sadness and despair and hopelessness and, depression and anxiety and all of those things that we all
yeah,
that we all experience in certain
all experience them.
degrees, right?
We all experience the forks in the road, the highs and the lows, and that's where it's our job and our duty to pour into others
Hmm.
and to say, "Hey, I've been there. I've walked where you are." I
Hmm.
think that's one of the hard things, when you deal with as a therapist, as a counselor, and you deal with somebody with suicidal, tendencies, is to say, everybody goes through the highs and lows in life, but
Yeah.
you can say, "Hey, I've been where you are. Like I felt low before,
For a
but
long time, for a
yeah,
long time.
yeah, but look
Yeah.
where am now because I have faith. I know myself. I know where I'm going." And I think it's that you pour into people again, and that's what it's.
Yeah.
When somebody's down, sometimes it's let them know you can get past this. It's temporary. Unfortunately, that's
Well,
a
well, and
different
when
story.
you're feeling helpless, sometimes it's good to help other people.
Absolutely,
Then that gives you a little sense of hope and
there's
meaning
no
and
doubt.
purpose too, right?
There's no doubt. I mean, again, you and I, being therapists and all that, I would venture to say we get energy, right?
Hmm.
We like to help each other. You don't become a counselor unless you want to help others, right?
Hmm.
It's not just
Hmm.
something that you do, but you also get some energy out of helping others,
Yeah.
right? When you know you've made a difference in somebody's life, when you know you've helped them overcome some anxiety or stress or low time in their life, that's you get something out of it.
Yeah.
If you don't feel that way, then you're
You're in
not
the wrong
you're
field.
not well, you're in the wrong field and you're not being honest, right?
Yeah.
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 So,
No, that's
uh,
why I think your work is so beautiful, Matthew. I mean, we just met, but I am so um I'm so glad that I met you. It was like
thank you. So
you're the kind of people, that help lift up the world,
yeah,
right? By sharing our stories and sharing our struggles, that we
yeah,
help raise other people up and give them hope,
yeah,
to find their own light inside
yeah,
of themselves.
absolutely. That's what's
So,
about.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much for being here. How can people find out more about you and Convene?
Yeah, so convenecommunities.com. That's again, we're looking for people that have a passion about whatever it is they have a passion about. People come to Convene for a ton of different reasons. Whether that be personal, whether that be a nonprofit, whether that be a business, whether it does so much. There's people in there come and write anonymous experiences about their battles with depression, but
Mm-hmm.
there's also people that use it to coach soccer teams.
Hmm.
So it really can do anything that you want it to do. It's a very versatile platform. um, we're bringing together next week. We're in the planning phases right now. It's going to be wonderful. We're going to have an event in Charlotte, North Carolina, this time year frame.
Hmm.
Next year it's going to be awesome, and it's going to be called Convene Real Talk,
Hmm.
and it's going to be about speakers coming together and speaking about their stories,
Yeah.
and talking about what they're doing to lift others up. It's going to be great. Everybody needs to come. It's going to be a wonderful thing. So I hope you come. MatthewCurrin.com, social media, Matthew Currin, Convene Communities, you name it. I'm on there. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
all over the place.
What a beautiful, beautiful platform you're building. And, it's a helping resource to help people in so many different
Yes.
areas in the world. So I honor you for all of your
Thank you.
service.
Thank you, and I appreciate you, having me on. It's been fun getting to know you. Like I said, we stayed on, for an hour and a half the other night after our wellness
Yeah.
summit, which was just an amazing thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just bringing people together,
Yeah.
lifting people up, convene,
Swapping stories.
yeah, swapping stories. We all have a story, right? We all have a story that can help others. So
Yeah, exactly. So, listeners, I'm sure you will love this conversation. So much wisdom and insights. And, as I always say, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one that you have with yourself,
mhm,
so that when you fill yourself up with that love and that respect and that confidence and expressing your authentic truth, then we can help do the same for
yeah,
others. So, subscribe, share with all your friends, wake
yeah,
up to real love.
that's right.
And
Oh,
every day wake up to more real love. And thank you so much, Matthew. I look
no,
forward to
thank you.
many
Keep
more
doing what you're doing.
conversations with
Yeah,
you.
yeah, keep doing what you're doing. It's wonderful, making a
All right.
difference.
All right. Thank you. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.